Welcome to City Week, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Alton West. As we celebrate Black History Month, I will have guests on that will be talking about significant facts about LaGrange and as it relates to Black history. So stay tuned for my guests coming up in just a moment. Welcome to City Week, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm being joined by a local citizen from our community that has served our community in a number of capacities over the years, starting out with at the daycare center, and she's also on the board of planning the Historical Commission for the City of LaGrange. I'm being joined today by Mrs. Gwen Redwine. Gwen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, Gwen, I talked a little bit about, some of the things that you've done here in our community, but I know that I can't even start to kind of start chipping away at the iceberg of what some of the things you've done. But if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm a mother of three children.
Uh-huh.
I have two daughters, Amy and Alina, and my son, Dwight Lanier Jr. And I have four granddaughters and one grandson.
Okay.
And I'm proud to be from LaGrange, a graduate of class of 74. Yay, LaGrange High.
Okay.
Hey, classmates. But I've been proud to be here in LaGrange. I stayed away just a small time from 74 to 85.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting my career together. I was a graduate of Reinhardt Junior College up in Waleska, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I left there and went to West Georgia College in Carrollton, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I married while I was up there, and got a chance to work in my political field, because that's what my major was in, political science. And so I was first African American elected for the Carroll County.
Okay.
And served for the city of Whitesburg.
Oh, yeah, that's right outside. Mm-hmm. I know Whitesburg. I go through there sometime when I'm going up to Carrollton. That's when you see the speed limit says 25, you better do 24 because they're sitting out there. Absolutely. So you from LaGrange originally, and moved away, get your formal education, and you came back here. You say you were gone up until about 85. Mm-hmm. What brought you back to LaGrange, if I may ask, Gwen?
Well, it wasn't a happy time. My mother passed away,
mm-hmm.
and we needed someone to continue the work that she had started at LaGrange Child Development Center at 506 Ware Street.
That's right.
And so I came on board in '86 and worked there until recently, 2010,
mm-hmm.
Continuing the work that she started, helping young children here in the city of LaGrange from 3 months to 12 years old.
Okay. And Gwen, as we talk about, and we're in month of February, which is recognized as Black History Month, it is so important that we recognize the accomplishments and the achievements of African Americans in education, political, as you talked about, the political arena or whatever arena they have landed in. Talk a little bit about the importance of educating kids and the early on education of children. And you did that for a number of years. Talk how important that is for young people to be educated.
It is very important because a lot of people think children choose their careers when they get to high school, and that's the last place that, they're ready. Mm-hmm. You want kids at 5 and 6, telling you they're going to be firemen. They're most likely going to be a fireman. And most of the time they tell you they want to be a doctor, mm-hmm. Because we had a lot of doctors and lawyers and everything that came through. But they were the ones who told you mm-hmm. when they were small mm-hmm. that they were going to college and they were going to be about something. But by the time they get to high school, they have so many other influences that have touched their lives till they try to find the easy way out. But if you start them small, 2 and 3 years old, putting it in their mind, you know, that they can be professionals. And LaGrange has produced quite a few professional people, and we need to really try to encourage our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds to, when they ask them what do they want to be, you know, they can already have it in their mind what they need to do to be a professional.
Absolutely. They need a direction or goal or roadmap to help them to accomplish the goals that they're setting. And then, too, as they articulate those things to teachers and family members and friends and other individuals, they will also be their support system.
Yes, and lead them that
help
way.
Absolutely. So, Gwen, when I talked about, or when I thought about wanting to bring somebody on, because again, we celebrating Black History Month, and I thought about somebody I want to bring on the show to kind of talk a little bit about African American history, and then particularly African American history as it pertains to the city of LaGrange. Of course, your name came to mind. And I want to do a 2-part series. I just want to let my viewing audience know I'm going to do a 2-part series, having Gwen to come back after this one, because as we started talking, there were a lot of things that I did not know that pertain to African American history here in LaGrange. But I want to start out this segment and talking about some of those things and talking about schooling and the importance of school and various things of that nature. But before we get into that, Gwen, talk a little bit about your role on the Preservation Historical Commission. You were appointed by the Mayor and Council. Talk about your role on that commission for us, if you don't mind.
Well, they always say I'm pointing out, you know, how what happens in the community reflects to the African American community, and we have now started the project of the Hamilton Road project. It was started 30 years ago, you know, and right now all of our history is disappearing. A lot of people don't understand how important Hamilton Road is to the city of LaGrange. It was one of the first streets in LaGrange and one of the first major highways in the United States.
Oh my.
And
Road.
And then you don't realize, as a child, we would when we first moved to Brenner Boulevard, which is a part of King Park, we could walk from there uptown. But the sights and sounds along Hamilton Road just really was very exciting to us, you know, because we didn't know anything about cafes and jukeboxes and then going out to eat. Oh, we didn't know anything about that, you know, because we cooked, ate, and did everything at home,
right.
You know. But being able to walk along Hamilton Road and then you see different people, and you know, and it was just a part of your life, you know, and part of your daily life. Because most of the time, if you walked to school, you had to go, you know, past Hamilton Road, across Hamilton Road to go to school. And so as part of this historic preservation, we get a chance to see, I went to a conference in September, and we got a chance to see a Rosenwald school, an African-American school that was built on the side of a mountain.
Oh my.
A campus. They had preschool, regular school, high school, junior high, all of it on the side of a mountain, to let you know just how important education is, and was even before now.
Absolutely. And Gwen, and that's one of the things I want to bring you back on the show to talk about, because there's a lot of people that don't know about the Rosenwald schools and why they were established and some of the areas that they were established in. And then in our conversation, I found out that there was even one right here in Troup County. Yeah. And I'm going to get you to hold that tidbit, and that would be one of my next segments that we talk about that, okay? And we were talking about your role on the Historical Preservation Commission, because you guys look at applications and you can make rulings on them as far as the historical significance of them. And talking about that, we have a designated area, but then some of the things that we're going to talk about here today are outside of our designated area as the identified designated area by the City of LaGrange Mayor and Council as a historic district. But these locations are very historic in their own nature and by their own rights. And we're talking about education in this segment, which I think is the foundation for any child or any person that wants to achieve various things in life. There were some schools here in our community. There were about 4 of them. I'm going to just take them in the order that you and I talked about them earlier. Talk about East Depot School. Talk about where that school was located. And Gwen, we're going to get started, but I'm going to have to take a commercial break, so I'll stop you at some point and we'll go to a commercial break, and then we'll come back and continue to talk about these various schools, okay? But start out talking about East Depot for us, if you don't mind.
Okay. East Depot was at the on Daniel Street, and a lot of people don't realize all the streets in the black neighborhood were dirt. So it was on a dirt road at the end of East Depot Street that comes from downtown. And we have some pictures of it down at the archive, Troup County Archive. And I also work with the Troup County Historical Society.
You do, that's right.
So we have some pictures of that school, and then we have most of the yearbooks for that school.
Okay.
And there's a lot of information inside of those yearbooks about all the black businesses that were here in LaGrange, and how they helped keep our community together. You know, my mother was a 1955 graduate of East Depot, and she came all the way from Glenn, Georgia. She moved to LaGrange with her brother, and walked from Thomastown to East Depot to go to school.
Oh my!
And there are people that lived out on the Towns Road, where Mount Zion Baptist Church is. That's another historic site. And they have a historic African American school on their campus. And they had to walk from there all the way to East Depot. And I don't know whether Miss Annie Copeland, she's in Atlanta now. Then we had students came, Mr. Green talked about his family coming all the way from Hammett Road all the way to East Depot. And then they had the famous preacher, Reverend Otis Moss. They walked all the way from Mount Olive.
Mount Olive, Old
Mount Olive and Mount Olive communities outside of LaGrange. And so these kids were walking 8 to 9 miles
to
come to school at East Depot.
Okay. Gwen, let me do this. I'm going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll refresh ourselves, and then we'll come back and we're going to continue talking about the schools here in our community, okay?
Okay.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to be back with more of Black History Week with Gwen in just a moment. All right. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Breathe now.
Hi, I'm Shannon Gavin Johnson, the Director of Legacy Museum on Main, and this is a brief moment in LaGrange's history. It's February, and we're celebrating Black History Month. Ethel Woodrick was born January 17, 1905, the grandchild of former slaves. Her mother died when she was 5, and her father moved away to Chattanooga, leaving her and her brother Anderson to live with their grandparents. Even before completing her college degree, Ethel began teaching at age 23 in 1928 in Coweta County. From 1939 to 1945, she taught at McGregor Street School, which would later become Kelly Grammar School, and rented a room from Mrs. Mabel Wilkerson at 401 Union Street. Miss Woodrick received her B.S. degree from Savannah State in 1942. The same year, she married Albert Ronald Kite. The following summer, she completed a master's degree from Atlanta University. She also completed postgraduate work from Columbia University and the University of Georgia. In the summer of 1945, Troup County Board of Education employed Mrs. Kite as their first and only Jeans supervisor. Jeans Foundation provided support for education and vocational programs for African Americans in rural communities. As Jean's supervisor, Mrs. Kite was in effect the assistant superintendent over all black schools. She held the position until 1970. During her tenure with Troup County, Mrs. Kite oversaw many changes, including the introduction and implementation of teacher in-service, summer school, and a massive merger of rural schools into a single high school. Previously called Mount Beulah, in 1956, that school was renamed to honor Ethel W. Kite in response to a petition of the Troup County Negro Association. Mrs. Kite was also instrumental in implementing the Freedom of Choice program that brought initial, though very limited, desegregation to Troup County. In 1970, she was invaluable as the dual system was merged into one unified and fully integrated school system. Her tireless efforts did not stop at education. She and other volunteers opened a library for the black community that would later be named in her honor. She served as president of the National Congress of Colored Parents and Teachers from 1967 to 1961 and was president of the Georgia Parents and Teachers Association. She was a member of Warren Temple Methodist Church and Zeta Phi Beta and Continental Society sororities. Mrs. Kite retired in 1977 after 49 years of service in education. During integration and consolidation, the school bearing Mrs. Kite's name was restructured and renamed. However, in 1996, the Board of Education built a new elementary school and named it for Ethel W. Kite. Ethel Woodrick Kite died October 10, 1990 in LaGrange and was buried with her husband in Sunset Land Cemetery in Noonan. To learn more about Black History Month and African Americans in LaGrange's history, visit Legacy Museum on Main. This has been a brief moment in LaGrange's history.
Welcome back to City Week, ladies and gentlemen. As we are celebrating Black History Month, I am being joined today by Mrs. Gwen Redwine, and she's giving us a little bit of unknown history facts about LaGrange and some of the historical sites here in our community. And Gwen, I just want to welcome you back once again. And before commercial break, we were talking about East Depot School, and you were talking about some of the various surrounding communities, how individuals were walking 8 and 9 miles from their various communities to come to East Depot High School, because a lot of the churches you mentioned, Mount Olive there, it had an elementary school on their church campus there, but in order to go to high school, they had to go walk over to East Depot. And you saying your mother was a 1955 graduate at East Depot too. Mm-hmm. Continue talking about that a little bit before we go into the other schools, if you don't mind, Gwen.
Okay, she went to the State Line School
Mm-hmm.
over in Glenn, Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
and they just went to the 10th grade, and later on they added the 11th grade, and it was also a Rosenwald school. We'll tell you more about that later.
Okay.
But and that's how she got the. Her mother, Cleve Broom Strickland. She was also a teacher.
Oh, okay.
You know, so
Mm-hmm.
teaching has always been in our family. I'm a teacher, and I have a sister, Gloria. She's a math specialist
Mm-hmm.
up in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you a question, Gwen, because I know that a lot of the educators, or a lot of the African Americans back in that time, they went to school and they all became teachers. Why do you think that was?
That was a good steady paycheck. It wasn't a whole lot, just like it isn't today. But it was a steady job, and it was, and what you did with a steady job, you paid your bills, and you paid them on time, so you were able to get houses, cars, whatever you needed.
Okay.
But Mr. Green and Miss Green can give you more information on that.
So the quality of life there is what it was, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, very good. Okay.
But they but you don't know how much influence they had over children, and and teaching them to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because they see so much, they see enough wrong stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't see enough right stuff.
That's right. Okay. There was another school that you and I were talking about is Kelly Grammar, and then it was also named Kelly Grammar or McGregor Kelly Grammar, which is one and the same. Talk about that school and where that was located.
Now it was located on McGregor Street and faced Brown Street, and it was came out of the Union Street School that was on Hamilton Road.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And it was named the McGregor Street School when it first opened. And then I think in 1945 they changed it to Kelly Grammar.
Okay.
And I attended that school from the 1st to the 4th grade.
Okay.
And really enjoyed it. We used to have the operettas where we have costumes and put on plays, and you know, it was a fun time. It really was.
Okay. And so what grade? It went from the 1st to the 4th grades, or
no, it went to the 1st to the 8th grade.
to the 8th grade. You just attended up to the 4th.
I left at the 4th grade. I mean, at the 5th grade, because they had the freedom of choice, where you could decide what school you wanted to go to, and my mom decided she wanted us to go to Cannon Street.
Okay.
And that's when we started attending Cannon Street, and I attended there from the 5th to the 5th and the 6th grade with my brothers and sisters.
Okay.
But we were upset with our mama because we used to live at 123 Reed Street, right across from the school, and we couldn't go to it.
Ah, okay.
And then we moved to Mason Street, and when we moved to Mason Street, that's when Mama said we were going to Cannon Street.
Oh my! So what was the thinking behind
and
that?
that was all the way across town.
Right. Okay.
It was a good little walk.
So you all were walking at this time, you and your brother and
Yes,
sister.
no school buses.
Okay. So when y'all moved to Mason Street, y'all started walking all the way.
All the way, yo.
They wanted you to get your exercise in. I guess
Yes.
that's early time, right? Okay. Okay. And then Kelly Grammar. Now tell people where I mean, because they say McGregor Street. Tell them what that location is now today. Kelly Grammar location.
It is the cafe.
The cafe.
Head
building.
Start building.
That's right.
Part of the old school is there on McGregor Street. I think they got a Head Start center down there, lower.
Yeah, I think
McGregor
the
or
back
something?
portion of the old building is still there, and then there was a new portion that was added facing Brown Street. As you mentioned earlier, the school was oriented to face Brown Street, but I think originally the entry was off of McGregor Street, I believe it was, correct?
Yeah.
Now over, I want to go back to East Depot just for a moment. The East Depot is now the campus where Twin Cedars is located.
Yes.
And I think the only remaining part of that building is the gymnasium. I think there may be another part of it that's being used as administrative.
Where the original school was, it's still there. And I have to fuss a little bit because they tore down my part. I had where the kindergarten building was on the back side.
That's right.
That's where I got a grant from the Callaway Foundation and redid that building for daycare, and for 19 years.
Right. That's right.
So they tore it down. That building had been added in 1968 as a kindergarten wing.
Right. I remember being over there, and that area, the thread now comes through. So that's where your building was located back. That's right. I do remember that. Now, and then the other school that we want to talk about, you mentioned it just a moment ago, is the Union Street School.
Yes.
Where was that school located, Gwen?
It was located where the Union Street Park is now, between Union Street and Hamilton Road. And I think they named it Frank Cox Park and Union Street Park a few years ago. And now we don't know what it's going to be except for pavement, because that's where the Hamilton Road widening is going to be.
That's right.
And they have already purchased the Department of Transportation has already purchased that area. And then we found out that it belongs to First Baptist Church.
That's right.
Which was established in 1838.
That's right. That was absolutely
one of the oldest churches in the African American community, that and Warren Temple.
Absolutely. And Gwen, there's so many locations that, until you and I started talking, that I just had no idea. Of course, we always hear about, of course, Horace King, the noted bridge builder who's buried here in LaGrange off of Mulberry Street. But there's so many other things here in our community that has significance to African Americans. And I want to give an opportunity for you to come back so we can talk more about some of these things and hopefully we'll inspire some of our young people and all people to know a little bit more about the history of our community, because it takes all of us. And I think when we talk about community, when we, dissect that word, community is a common unity. And I think when we talk and we learn more about it, it helps us to find out that we have much more in common than we have in differences. And I think that will make our community such a stronger community, a more vibrant economical community as well. And then the Union Street School, I think we have pictures of all these schools that I know that our guys will show as Gwen has been talking about them. That was just kind of an old wood frame school, correct, Gwen?
Yes.
Talk about how were those schools heated back in the days, Gwen?
They had heater. They had heaters, and parents would donate wood, and everything, to keep. And the parents were really part of of the school, and making sure everybody had what they needed. The Union Street School was established in 1906. It was the first African American public school.
Okay. Did you say 1906? Okay.
Dr. Morgan donated Dr. Morgan donated that property for that school.
Okay. Dr. Morgan. And when you said 1906, that was a significant year for African American history as well. On the university, Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. The founding of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity is what I was speaking. Yeah, absolutely. And then Gwen, let me ask you, none of these schools are still standing today. And you were talking about, you and I were talking before we came on about vanishing history. And I think that should be the title of your book when you get ready to publish that, Vanishing History. Why is it so important that we reflect and remember these buildings, as well as some of the other buildings that we're going to talk about in our next segment? Why is it so important that we remember these locations?
Because children today, they don't realize what it's like to have a whole community where you don't go anywhere else. Everywhere you can go to get what you need, you just walk right there to it. And it was managed by people that look like them,
Okay.
And it's different now, It's everything is totally different. We didn't know nothing about no McDonald's. We couldn't eat at Dairy Queen. But we didn't know nothing about McDonald's. They were Just Right Cafe. You go over there and get you a hamburger, get you a drink.
Okay.
One Way Cafe, the Blue End Cafe, you just, you could go in there and sit around with, your neighbors, drink and just have a nice time.
Okay.
And I love the Mr. Williams store at the end of Mesa Street. We used to go up there at least 3 times a day. Go up there and buy one piece of candy and come back.
So just walking back and forth, mother.
Walking back and forth to the store.
Okay.
But kids don't have. That's very frightening because the kids don't have that today. They can't. Most of them can't even play outside in their yard.
The sense of pride and purpose and community once again. Well, Gwen, you mentioned a couple of other locations, but I do want to have you come back on it as we continue to celebrate African American history and Black History Month. And I do want to invite some others to come on and talk about some things that are significant to them that have taken place here in our community. Because I think the only way that we learn or that we improve, that we learn from our history, and we take that history and we fashion it as we move forward to the future. So Gwen, I want to thank you very much for being on the show today, and I definitely want to get you to come back on another segment as we continue to talk about African American history and the significance here in LaGrange, okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for more City Week coming up in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining City Week this week. My guests have been from the community, Mrs. Gwen Redwine, as she talked about the various schools that were designed or built for African Americans back in the day. East Depot, Kelly Grammar, McGregor Kelly Grammar, and Union Street schools. They were all located in the African American area and primarily around the Hamilton Road area. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have her back on for another segment of African American history. And as always, I hope that you've enjoyed this interview and that you will join us for more of City Week.